My name is Akshat Meni, and I'm a research assistant at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. It is a matter of great pleasure to extend a warm and humble welcome to all to another edition of the ICS's Wednesday seminar titled Engagement or Confrontation, Japan's Strategic Dilemma in Dealing with North Korea. This seminar delves into Japan's relationship with one of its closest neighbors, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or North Korea, a dynamic historically fraught with tension. The legacy of Japanese colonial rule, the unresolved abduction issue, persistent nuclear missile threats, and the complexities of diplomatic engagement have all contributed to ongoing friction. For decades, Japan has grappled with the strategic dilemma whether to seek dialogue and engagement or uphold a confrontational stance centered on security, deterrence, and the abduction issue. This challenge is further intensified by North Korea's advancing nuclear and missile capabilities, which pose a direct threat to Japan's national security. More recently, North Korea's reported deployment of troops in the Ukraine war has heightened concerns that Russia might respond by bolstering Pyongyang's illegal weapons programs. Meanwhile, North Korea's cyber activities and illicit revenue generation represent an expanding front of conflict with far reaching security implications for Japan. As Tokyo shapes its policy towards Pyongyang, it must carefully balance its pursuit of regional stability with domestic pressures tied to the abduction issue. This talk will examine the key friction points in Japan's strategic calculus and explore the delicate balance between engagement and confrontation in its approach to North Korea. The speaker for today's session is Dr. Dibendra Sahu, who is an assistant professor of Japanese studies at the O.P. Jindal Global University, where he teaches courses on Japanese politics and diplomacy and political and business risk management. Dr. Sahu holds a PhD in Japanese studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and was a recipient of the Mombusho Fellowship, after which he pursued research at the University of Tokyo for 2 years. Dr. Sahu has interviewed various high-profile dignitaries, including the late former Prime Minister, Mr. Abe Shinzo. Dr. Sahu has contributed to the Japan, South Asia, and Japan-Korean Peninsula segment of an illustrious database titled The World and Japan. This was funded by grants and aid from the Ministry of Education Japan and the Japan Society for Promotion of Science. Dr. Sahu's research interests span the field of Japanese studies, international political economy, and Indian politics. The seminar shall be chaired by Professor Shrabani Roy Chaudhary, Professor in Japanese Studies, Center for East Asian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Her association with Japan began with the Japan Foundation Fellowship in 1996 to 1997. She has been on a visiting scholar program at the Keizai Koho Center, Ministry of Economics and Industry Policy Research Institute, Ministry of Finance, Japan, RAIB, Kobe University, GSID, and Nagoya University. Her recent publications are centered on economic diplomacy between Japan and India, with a special reference to Japanese business. Currently, she is looking at India-Japan relations from the perspective of the power dynamics in the Indo-Pacific region. She has, to her credit, 2 edited volumes titled Japan-SAARC Partnership, Way Ahead, 2014, and India-Japan Relations at 70, Building Beyond Bilateral, published in 2020. Now, before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all participants to please follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the seminar. Questions may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself. Thank you, and over to you, Professor Rocha.
Thank you, Akshat. And Akshat gave a very strong introduction for this particular subject on North Korea and Japan's strategic dilemma that Japan has. What I would like to point out before I hand over the mic to Debendra is the fact that few things have also changed with respect to technological advantages that are being used by North Korea with respect to harassing Japan with security concerns. The new approach has been cybersecurity hackings, which has created for Japan multiple problems, including sometimes hacking into their medical directories of people, which is definitely a very strong citizen compromising factor that happens. Currently, with Trump back in the seat in USA, things are even more difficult for Japan because in his previous outing, Trump had actually shown warmth towards North Korea, which definitely does not augur well for Japan. So there are lots to be heard and talked, and from a person like Devendra Sahu, who to the audience out here has just about got his associate professorship, I think, over this last weekend. And so he now graduates to become an associate professor in Jindal. He has worked on this subject, and he was extremely lucky to have probably interviewed many policymakers of Japan during his Mombusho tenure on North Korea, policymakers as well as academics. So I hope to hear a lot of good, solid information-based presentation from Dr. Sahu. And over to you, Devendra Sahu, for your presentation. If you're using the PowerPoint, please share first so that it sort of stabilizes over the internet. I hope this is visible to everybody. Okay, if there is no more, hands being raised about difficulty, Devendra Sahu, you can begin. Take, I think, around 45 minutes or so before we open the floor for question Q&A.
Okay. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yeah, I can, but be a little louder, please.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I also at the outset thank Institute of Chinese Studies, Professor Alka Acharya and her team to invite me for this Wednesday webinar today. First thing first, why Japan and North Korea? Like we always talk about Japan being an enigma and Japanese foreign policy being an enigma. So similarly, North Korea is also an enigma to most of the world. When I talk about engagement or confrontation, the minimum form of engagement is establishment of diplomatic ties or normalizations, which both these countries lack of. And the maximum form of confrontation is military, and which, kind of provocations that we see in the last decade since Kim Jong-un came to power in North Korea, has put Japan in serious with serious security concerns. In the meanwhile, Japan has tried everything, diplomatic engagement, economic sanctions, summits, and even ghosting North Korea for a while. So nothing seems to work permanently. And with, as Professor Shrabani Roy Choudhury just spoke about Trump coming to power, and we have seen the madness with which Trump operates from the recent, Oval Office showdown with the Ukraine president. So it's kind of going to be interesting strategic dilemma that in the next 4 years during Trump's presidency. So that is why, taking the opportunity, I thought I'll shed some lights on my experience of studying Japan's relationship with North Korea in the webinar today. So, first, as I said, I just want to give a idea about how the provocations looks like. This is a tracker by Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, which categorizes three different kind of provocations: one nuclear, two missile, and third others. And from 1990 till today, they track this, and you can see how this is a kind of like in the different type of graphs. This is a trend graph, which consistently going up over the period, and more so after 2012 when Kim Jong-un came to power. And like out of all those provocations, if we singularly, obviously these provocations are targeted towards United States, Republic of Korea, Japan, Sea of Japan, in between Korea and Japan. But like if you singularly like even remove all those other provocations only targeted towards Japan, then the count is 161, which has direct repercussion for Japan. So this is another thing for which like we must study Japan North Korea relationship, and how they have their bilateral relationships have progressed in spite of the irritants that they already have. Historical speaking, this is very well known. Glenn Hook has very clearly elucidated these four structural barriers: colonization, national division, bipolarization, and fragmentation of the regional economy, in his book with regard to East Asia. And this also holds true for North Korea. The principal impetus of impulse of Japan's leader with regard to the establishing a greater East Asian co-prosperity sphere, or the pan-Asianism that they spoke about, argued the expansion of Japanese imperialism and to liberate East Asia from Western colonial rule. And this colonial rule by Japan generated a good deal of suffering and anti-Japanese feeling, and that is true for North Korea. Likewise, the division of the country along the 38th parallel by creating South Korea and North Korea through the hasty agreement between United States and USSR. The country, both North Korea and South Korea, they feel the division, the division can be pointed right at Japan because of its past colonial rule, and there is a perception in both the Koreas that Japan also historically has been averse to the idea of unification of Korea. Third is the bipolarization, the Cold War bipolarity. Both North Korea and Japan belonging to two different blocs headed by USSR and USA since the Korean War 1950. While US committed main material and also willing to expand its security perimeter by interposing the US 7th Fleet in the Taiwan Strait to prevent, whether to prevent China to attempt invading Taiwan, or to, kind of deter North Korean adventure in Korean Peninsula. This erected a bilateral alliance system in East Asia, and both the countries belong to the two different blocs. Finally, the fragmentation of the regional political economy. So in the pre-war period, all the East Asian countries were integrated in the economically in the region. But because of the bipolarism, because of the post-war politics, the regional political economy was kind of fragmented. Japan was encouraged to develop into an advanced democracy and market economy, whereas North Korea, with Kim Il Sung's repulsive communist dictatorship, that produced a model of developmentalism based on amalgamation of revolutionary socialism, anti-colonialism, Confucianism, and the self-reliance, or what they call Juche ideology. So that was these structural barriers were there. And to some, Japanese policymakers were thus faced with massive task in seeking to reintegrate, Japan into the East Asian region, and that is true for North Korea as well. Okay. So in the post-war period, while Japan proceeded to have normalization with Republic of Korea with the Treaty of Basic Relations in 1965, with DPRK, they faced a certain problem. So the problem, in the sense, like, what stopped them from having normalization is kind of they tried to kind of bargain. North Korea tried to kind of bargain a similar economic assistance package that has been handed over to South Korea, but there was a confusion with the terminology of the economic package that was being given. So North Korea insisted to be termed as economic reparation or compensation, whereas Japan insisted to call it economic assistance. Similarly, the second thing was North Korea was also insistent on Japan's compensation, taking into the consideration of the plight of the comfort women issue. Third, the legal status to the ethnic Korean living in Japan. And finally, Japan's apology for North Korea to the colonial past. So these were the few things which initially became the irritant to not allow Japan to have normalization with DPRK or North Korea, and that normalization has still not taken place. But that doesn't mean that both the country did not have any kind of contacts. So as we said, as I said earlier, the Koreans living in Japan, there are almost about 600,000 Koreans remained in Japan, and those formed the General Association of Korean Residents in Japan, or Chosen Soren, or Chongryon in Korean, and they maintained a very good channel of communications. And this channel of communication was one through the Japanese Communist Party, and the other one, so the Social Democratic Party, or formerly known as Japan Socialist Party. However, the most important contact between Japan and North Korea happened through this Chosen Soren, or the General Association of Korean Residents in Japan, and they kind of operated business, hospitals, newspaper, trade was flourishing, even if it was not on official lines. They operated commercial vehicles. That vehicle was named Mangyobong 92, a large ship that sailed regularly between Niigata and Busan, a city of North Korea's eastern coast, until imposition of sanction in 2006. So though officially Japan did not have any relationship with North Korea, but they maintained this channel of communication, which was very important. So this is a picture of Mangyobong 1992, and these are the two things from Niigata to Wonsan, which made regular foray and kind of taking people, money, and then things like we'll come to the three assets later on, which talked about the Kane, Mono, and Hito. So like these irritants kind of stayed in the post-war period, not to allow them the normalizations until 1990s. And since 1990s, North Korea tried to kind of escalate through the provocations that I showed in the previous graph, and also try to develop nuclear weapon. Then Japan and United States, they forced to engage with North Korea to resolve all those issues from where they had significant security threat. Finally, some form of, so I talk about the engagement and confrontation. So the first and foremost, and the only level of summit diplomacy that they have had during Junichiro Koizumi's tenure in 2002 is the in September 27, 2002. So this kind of this Japanese diplomacy kind of manifested independence from the United States, as Koizumi went against Washington's advice to hold this summit. And this remains the only summit meeting. Obviously, 2004 also was the second summit between Koizumi and Kim. So Junichiro Koizumi remains the only leader who had a summit meeting with North Korea, and these two summits remains the highest form of engagement between both the countries. So in this summit meeting, what we saw is that the only declaration that has been signed, and which remains the only reference point for any forms of engagement between Japan and North Korea. So both the countries signed a declaration very popularly known as Pyongyang Declaration. From the Japan side, there was deep remorse and heartfelt apology that has been for the tremendous damage and suffering to the people of Korea that has been caused due to colonial past. And then they also reiterated their commitment to provide economic cooperations after normalization, including the grant and aid and long-term loans with low interest rates. From the DPRK side, They expressed their intention to further maintain the moratorium on missile launching in and after 2003. And on the nuclear front, both sides agreed on the need of resolution to the security issues by encouraging dialogues among the stakeholders. So, and both leaders agreed to resume the Japan and DPRK normalization talk in 2002. But one thing was very critical here, which became part of the escalation index between both the countries' engagement, is the abduction issue. So the Pyongyang declaration also made a reference to the outstanding issues concerning the lives and security of Japanese citizens, which is referred to as abduction issue in later on. So the North Korean side confirmed that it would take appropriate measures to prevent the recurrence of these regrettable incidents that took place under the abnormal relationship between the two countries. So since long, Japan was claiming that many of their citizens have been abducted, and in the background negotiations done by Hitoshi Tanaka, they had taken 17 names to the summit meeting, and they handed over the 17 meetings to Kim Jong Il and his team. And kind of history was made both in terms of it being the first summit, and also North Korea, after continuous consistent denial, they finally admitted that out of the 17 names that Japan has shown them, they said 13 of the Japanese citizens have actually been abducted by them, out of which 8 have died, and they were ready to talk about the 5 victims to travel back to Japan. And they said the other 4, they have no idea about. There is no information of them being abducted to North Korea. So in a way, Kim Jong Il, when he said that I apologize for the kidnapping, and he said that this is truly regretful, and I offer my candid apology. This will never happen. He added saying that the backdrop bad relations, this happened as in the backdrop of bad relationship, and I come to know about this, the persons responsible have already been punished. But Japan was not buying those arguments. But anyway, that was a starting point, which everyone thought is kind of Japan and North Korea have begun towards normalization with a successful negotiations on abduction issue. Koizumi made a triumphant return to Japan. First, both the sides at the summit meeting, so kind of engagement at the top level. Second, the Pyongyang declaration, first joint statement between both the countries, till today it acts as a reference point to move forward for normalizations. And third, the admission and return of 5 abductees. And the most important is the independence from Washington. In 2002 August, Hitoshi Tanaka met delegates from the administration of United States President George W. Bush in Tokyo to brief them about the situation, about the planned visit of Koizumi to Pyongyang. And in the room there was Deputy Secretary of State Richard Armitage, and what Hitoshi Tanaka says that his briefing to Armitage, he says, my briefing included a draft Pyongyang declaration, and he says that I gave them my perspective, everything. They were listening really quietly. It's a rare occasion for Japan to brief the American on something. It was actually rather than occasionally they get the briefing and they are always in shock. They are always in disbelief, or they are always in a surprise. There is always a surprise element from the American side. But it was the other way around, where Japan actually was briefing them and kind of surprising for the Americans to know that Japan is making a plan to visit Pyongyang. So Richard Armitage stood up very and abruptly and said that I'm going back to the embassy to call Secretary of State Colin Powell and kind of let's get Prime Minister Koizumi to talk to President Bush. And during the telephonic call, Koizumi said, I have made up my mind to resolve something which concerns me domestically, and I promise that Japan will not do anything that harms American interest. So So kind of kind of what we have seen throughout, Japan being a reactive state, not being a proactive on in its foreign policy. On this account, they showed a huge like relative independence from Washington in their approach to North Korea. But soon, soon the positive development, was kind of generated mixed feelings in Japan: shock, disgust, despair, perplexed, joy, relief for those of the family, for them, for those five abductees who returned, for remaining who were told that they have already died, including the poster child of abduction issue, Miss Megumi Yokota, who was a 13-year-old school-going girl who was abducted. And this Pyongyang declaration, this summit meeting, this return of five abductees, which was just being seen as a kind of successful engagement, soon snowballed into a conflict. With regard to three things. First, non-admitted. Japan was not buying the argument that these four people have not been admitted, and was insisting on more investigation on those. Second, with regard to the returned abductees. So what happens to their family? The family of these five abducted victims who returned, they were still in North Korea, and some of them had children who were byborn citizens of North Korea. So what happens to them? So there was confusion where North Korean side said that the initial agreement was Japan will take back these five abductees and will visit Japan and come back to North Korea to live a life in North Korea. But the moment the flight touched down in Haneda, Hitoshi Tanaka, who accompanied Junichiro Koizumi, came out and gave a statement that there has been no agreement for their return. They will stay in Japan, and we will try to pursue that their family also comes back to Japan. So that was another conflict, and third was the conflict with regard to the dates, the 8 abducted victims who had died, and the circumstances, and the kind of proofs, or the death certificate that was shown by North Korea was kind of very not very convincing, and Japan insisted on more proof on that account. So with regard to the returned abductees, how do you push for their family? Because their family now remains in North Korea, and these 5 abducted victims who have returned Japan were not willing to go back to North Korea. So then Japan came up with what is very popularly known as the 3 S's. So these are the 3 diplomatic cards to put pressure on North Korea to act, particularly on abduction issue, to force North Korea to investigate on those abducted victims, which North Korea did not accept, and also to give substantial proof to substantiate their claim that 8 of them had died. And finally, the more importantly, to return the families of the 5 abducted victims who just returned during the first summit. So these 3 S's is that, like, stopping the flow of 3 things: kane, mono, and hito. Kane is money, mono is things, hito and people. So Mangyabong 92, which I showed earlier, was actually was the one way where the transportation of, or the flowing of kane, mono, and hito between Japan and North Korea was happening in spite of no relationship between the 2 countries, no diplomatic relationship between the 2 countries. So one was the Foreign Exchange and Foreign Trade Control Law that was passed in 2004, which made the remittance of money back to North Korea by the General Association of people from North Korean origin or Korean descent that became very difficult. The second is the proposal to ban ship from certain terrorist countries, which was targeted at Mangyabong 92, from entering the coast of Japan, which would have put an end to flow of goods. And finally, third was a rumor which few politicians actually floated for is to ban Koreans in Japan, that is the members of Chosen Soren, from returning home if they ever visited North Korea. So these were the 3 diplomatic cards, the 3 S's, or the stopping the flow of Kane and Mono and Hito to put pressure on North Korea to act on abduction issue. So particularly the first one, foreign exchange and foreign trade control law becoming the foreign control bill becoming a law in 2002, that put tremendous pressure on North Korea to act, and North Korea kind of needed more food aid, and it was willing to deal, and that led to some background negotiation, and then led to the second visit by Koizumi, and it became again the second engagement for Koizumi at the top level in May 22, 2004. So that trip was a very short one. So other than reiterating the commitment that both the side has made to Pyongyang Declaration, the second summit yielded commitment on reinvestigation of those abductees whose whereabout is unknown or either have been claimed as dead by North Korea, and most importantly the return of the family members of the abducted victims. So the 5 abducted victims who had returned in 2002 with Koizumi, their family returned with Koizumi again in 2004 after the pressure on 3 assets. But with regard to the date, there has been no progress at all since then. In Stockholm in 2016, they made some progress by declaring that we are going to have liaison office in Tokyo and Pyongyang. And this picture in the bottom left is of Megumi Yokota. She has become a poster child. Any president of United States, whenever they visit, they make it a point to meet her parents, and since then there has been no progress, and she has become a poster child, and every time there is a provocation from North Korean side, the domestic Japanese media and news channels always show her picture and try to make it a domestic and sentimental agenda of bringing those abducted victims back, or actually delivering justice to them. So what started with the pre-war period irritants stopping normalizations between Japan and DPRK, and then Koizumi making an effort to start engagement, snowballed into a huge crisis that is called abduction, or what I call abduction as an escalation index, rather than being the root cause, where the root cause were the historical issues, and now slowly abduction issue has tried to replace that historical issue as the root cause. The second escalation matrix is the provocations by North Korea with regard to nuclear testing, missile testing, and other forms of provocations such as the cryptocurrency attack, the cyber attack, the shelling incident, the artillery firing, the trash balloon that has been fired over towards South Korea. So this shows, how the number of missile tests during the 3 regimes of the family, Kim Il Sung 15, Kim Jong Il 16, and Kim Jong Un in the last. I think this is 2012 to 2024. It's just misspelled, but 272 is the updated figure, and it's kind of. The missile testing and nuclear testing and missile ranging, which includes ICBMs, can cover the entire of Japan, are becoming a serious security threat to Japan. Now, this is a historical timeline of the nuclear testing, with September 2017 becoming the last nuclear test by North Korea, yielding about 140 plus kilotons. And since then, there has been no nuclear test. But this happened with all the 3 leaders. But what is substantial is, during Kim Jong-un's regime, the numbers are just like just hugely significant in terms of security concern for Japan. What we see is here is a trend of North Korea of taking the provocations to a substantial point of time, substantial point where they force the stakeholders in the region, in the, like when I call the stakeholders, it's usually means the six parties: China, South Korea, Japan, US, Russia, and North Korea. So the other five members of the six-party talk, the stakeholders to engage with North Korea, and North Korea would try to leverage those to gain some financial aid for its own survival. So after 2017 was height of everything, because that was the nuclear test, the missile test was at high. But soon you see this is the updated launches over time from 2012. You can see 2018 was there was not a single provocation, or there was not a single missile testing that has been done in 2018. So why? Because, as I said, the trend of provocation and followed by negotiation for assistance or engagement of assistance. So 2018 was a period of engagement for Kim Jong-un. So what happened in 2018 is this. So this is what Kim Jong-un did in the year 2018. After a series of background negotiation, the 2018 Kim and Trump summit led to subsiding of the crisis. And like Kim Jong-un also made it a point to meet all other leaders, South Korean President Moon Jae-in, the Chinese President Xi Jinping, the Russian President Vladimir Putin. But you see, the only person who is missing from this summit meeting in 2018 is Shinzo Abe. Why? Because there is flurry of comments. So I made a few comments from KCNA, the Korean Central News Agency, vis-a-vis Shinzo Abe. So initially, when 2017 happened, the September nuclear test happened, someone asked Shinzo Abe, like, are you going to engage with North Korea? And Shinzo Abe's response was blunt: there should be no talks for talk sakes. And whenever, like when even Donald Trump, with background negotiations, wanted to meet Kim Jong-un, then also Shinzo Abe maintained the same stance: there should be no talks for talk's sake. And now is the time for Japan and the US to exert maximum pressure on North Korea using all possible means. It's not time to talk. But KCNA also responded in the similar venom: a kind of idiot and villain, stupidest man in history, and imbecile and political dwarf without parallel in the world. And finally, when Shinzo Abe was under pressure, because of what we saw previously, all of the stakeholders in the region meeting him, kind of 2018 becoming a blank in the missile testing also, So then Shinzo Abe, kind of, try to moderate his statement, saying that I intend to meet without precondition or to break the cell of mistrust. And North Korea was very quick to, say no to Shinzo Abe by saying Abe would be better advised not to step foot in North Korea. So the door of engagement that was started by other stakeholders, and which Japan also tried to copy, was shot on the face of Shinzo Abe by North Korea. So it's not only that, there is a sign of hatred coming from the historical past also. Kind of, you see, Japan's wild ambition knows no bound. Constitution revision will lead Japan to self-destruction. Japan is dangerous warmongering state. Old-fashioned Japan has no future. So all those things. Anytime there is a talk of the national security strategy, there is a talk of increasing the defense budget. There is a talk of missile defense system. This kind of language that flows from KCNA, which shows the sign of hatredness from North Korea. So, kind of, like 2022, after the 2 years of COVID, 2022 saw the maximum number of missile testing. I think it was 66 in the year, and it was kind of a response to the US South Korea joint military exercise, the domestic political messaging of Kim's strength and kind of control over military, and to ward off any negative news that was coming from um, media with regard to North Korea's handling of COVID-19. Finally, future negotiations for bargaining and testing the international response. So with that, 2022 now, and also change in power in Japan after Shinzo Abe was gone, and then Fumio Kishida, and now Shigeru Ishiba. So what lies ahead is that what kind of approach Japan will have towards North Korea. So in terms of engagement, the most successful has been Pyongyang Declaration. At the same time, Pyongyang Declaration also, and in the summit meeting also, created further trouble in escalating the tension. Consultation level meeting are halted till 2016. If you see the MOPA website, in like MOPA has a kind of bilateral relationship documents has been mentioned under different subheadings, like if you have India-Japan relationship, all those summit meetings, bilateral talk meetings, joint declaration, joint statements all will be available in that link. So if you try to go to Japan and North Korea link, you'll just find the telephonic talks, the statements, the declaration by other countries with regard to response to North Korea. Nothing nothing substantial after 2002 and 2004 summit meetings. There has been background negotiation, as I said, in Stockholm in 2014, which they agreed for a consultation level meeting, and they continued that until 2016 before the halting when the provocation was at peak in 2017. So Shinzo Abe voiced his intent to meet Kim Jong-un, but then that was kind of responded back to saying you are not advised to step foot in North Korea. Then with Donald Trump coming to power, Shigeru Ishiba, he shelved the proposal. Which proposal was there to liaison office, to have an established liaison office in both Pyongyang and Tokyo to resolve the abduction issue. So with Donald Trump coming to power, Ishiba shelved the proposal to establish the liaison office, because he first wanted to assess how Trump is going to behave in the coming years. So with Ishiba coming to power, and then Donald Trump being Donald Trump, what he did in the previous in Trump 1.0, Japan could actually push for a dialogue, because knowing Trump, who could be very unpredictable, so Ishiba could push for dialogue. But what is the leverage? So there is always a risk of engagement with North Korea, having history of agreeing to talks, getting aired, and then doing exactly what it wants. So similarly, on the confrontation side, Japan has maintained a tough sanctions. Still, North Korea finds way of smuggling luxury goods by repackaging or relabeling them as school supplies. In terms of military preparedness, Japan relies on missile defense. Military budget has been increased. Debates have started on the ideas of preemptive strikes, but that puts Japan in the crosshairs of other two stakeholders in the region, that is China and South Korea. Japan also depends heavily on US for defense, but with Trump, there is a question. Why should we protect Japan for free? So that is a question Japan is asking to all the United States is asking to all its allies, even on trade matters. South Korea, kind of they are frenemies forever, and we don't know whether they can ever work together. China holds influence over North Korea, but how much? But it has its own national interest. It has its own reason. So can Japan push China to control North Korea, and how much leverage they have to actually push China to control North Korea? So these are the questions on the future approach Ishiba will have, provided he survives for long. So to me, Japan clearly faces a no-win situation, and engage too much, North Korea exploits it. Confront too much, you risk escalation. Negotiating with North Korea often resembles a kind of game of chess, where North Korea disregards the rules, disregards the board, and then declares victory on its own terms. So, like what lies ahead is obviously remains to be seen. But what I see, everything is already mentioned in their basic policy. So this is the basic policy that I have in the slide. It says Japan seeks to normalize its relationship with North Korea in accordance with the Japan DPRK Pyongyang Declaration. So that was I was mentioning as the first reference point and the only reference point, through comprehensively resolving outstanding issues of concern such as abductions, nuclear and missile issue, as well as the settlement of the unfortunate past. So they're talking about the goal is normalization by comprehensively resolving these three issues. And no one talks about normalization anymore. Japan is talking about abduction, and North Korea is talking about settlement of the unfortunate past. And meanwhile, they both disregard the nuclear and missile issue, which becomes very critical for Japan for its security and for regional security as well. So if at all there is a way to engage, it's the comprehensive, simultaneous three-track dialogue on abduction, on nuclear issue, and on the settlement of unfortunate past. I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Devinder. I think you have addressed a lot of concerns that are finding its way into policy making of Japan. More so, it is, while the general approach towards Japan and its, regional engagement, people are always talking about China-Japan relations. But in many ways, North Korea figures very strongly in their policy making. Even when you look at India-Japan joint statements that have been inked, there are at least 6 of them joint statements where mention of North Korea has been categorically mentioned. The NS's 2013 and 2022, both of them carry statements which declare North Korea as an enemy state, which is where I feel the whole concern which Devinder raised, that the 3 issues on which Japan and Korea should be, North Korea can engage to create some kind of a viable relationship. They're leaving out a critical area of nuclear and missiles and thing, while abduction and unfortunate past history is something that actually will not impact the region as much as a nuclear missile program of North Korea does. What is also very interesting is it is believed in Japan that the people who have been left behind in North Korea probably are not alive. And that abduction issue, from many academics, is just a political issue in place, where even the families of these abducted persons have accepted that they will never see them again. So it's a very interesting kind of a dilemma that Japan always has, because while it is known that the abduction persons are no longer alive and accepted at the family levels, still it is a big media issue that is always flagged as soon as North Korea-Japan relationship comes into the picture for various reasons. With this, I think we will open the floor for more questions. Akshat is taking the question, so please raise your hand and ask questions.
Ma'am, we currently do not have any raised hands, and there are no
But
questions currently in the chat box.
But do you want to ask any question, Akshat? You yourself are a very interested person with this kind of a subject.
Certainly, ma'am. Dr. Sao, thank you for
Go
your
ahead.
presentation. I was thinking that Japan's dealings with other states, especially states with it has abnormal relations, say in this case North Korea, uh, Japan probably would not want to negotiate, engage, or cooperate with North Korea directly. Would you say that maybe Japan might find it easier were it to use the Japan, South Korea, US trilateral as a fulcrum through which it engages with North Korea? If you could please shed some light on this. Thank you.
Okay, first thing, Japan taking the trilateral Japan, US, and South Korea forum to negotiate with North Korea, there needs to have convergence of interest. So the interest of all the three party differs. Whereas in the past there has been occasion in six party talk when there was advanced level negotiations on nuclear issues and missile testing issues, moratorium and missile issues, to utter frustration of United States and Republic of Korea. And even for China, Japan got up from the table because they said we want to discuss abduction issue first. So kind of for abduction issue now, like Shigeru Ishiba gave a statement just few days ago saying that President Trump has assured him that he will try to pressurize North Korea for a successful negotiation on abduction issue. But I doubt any such commitment from President Trump. That also happened with Shinzo Abe. Shinzo Abe came out like after the first Trump and Kim Jong-un summit meeting, when like media asked Shinzo Abe that media talks about you and him being friend, you have golf diplomacy together, you have burger diplomacy together, you play golf together. Did you talk about abduction issue with President Trump, and then did you ask President Trump to raise the abduction issue with Kim Jong-un during its summit meeting? Shinzo Abe said, yes, I have got a commitment. And after the summit meeting, he also said that President Trump assured me that he had raised these issues with Kim Jong-un, but the joint declaration between North Korea and United States did not have abduction issue, not a single word on abduction issue. So for United States, more importance is to the to kind of the security matters. For Republic of Korea, more important is that no more kind of trash balloons are fired on South Korea, or there is no more Cheonan incident, or there is no more Yongbyon artillery incident. But for Japan, I think for Japan also these matters are important, but because of the domestic sentimental issue, the kind of domestic emotions, political reasons, they try to focus on abduction issue. So I don't see how this trilateral forum will converge on one interest to actually pressurize North Korea to act in certain manner.
Thank you so much, sir.
If there is no questions, should we look at closing the session then?
As you suggest, ma'am.
Yeah.
No questions yet, ma'am. I think Dr. Sahu's comprehensive presentation has really got people thinking.
Yeah, it's a subject which not many people follow also.
As I said in the beginning, Japan has been an enigma for foreign policy experts, but North Korea has been an enigma for everyone. Unless and until you are following the North Korean trajectory, like even if you miss certain days, there must be certain developments. So kind of becomes difficult to comprehend what happens between both these two parties. It's kind of complicated, and I also look at the future being complicated, and how Ishiba with the new Trump administration, Trump 2.0, how it is going to have like which kind of impact it is going to have in the strategic choices or the approaches that Japan made is remains to be seen.
Yes, ma'am. May I please ask
Yeah.
you for your remarks on the same? Thank you.
Thank you, Devinder Sahu, for giving such a comprehensive, detailed presentation on a subject. As I always said, is a difficult subject and not many people follow. I'm also thankful to ICS to have given this platform to Dr. Sahu, and also to this subject. I'm sure that over a period of time, we'll have larger set of researchers who might actually look through this subject, maybe even bring in China, Japan, and North Korea as a triangular, way of understanding the region of East Asia. I would therefore, I think, thank both the speaker and the organizers of this particular session, and hand it over to Akshat for any further information that you would like to place in this platform.
Thank you so much, ma'am. With this, we come to the end of today's seminar, and we are highly grateful to Dr. Sahu and Professor Roy Chaudhary for gracing today's seminar with their presence. And for giving us their precious time. The video of today's discussion shall be available on the ICS's YouTube channel. We would also like to invite you to the next seminar titled A Review of China's Implementation of the UN's Women, Peace and Security Agenda since 2015, featuring Professor Li Yingtao. The ICS conducts seminars every Wednesday, and further information regarding the topic can be found on our website. You may also subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you so much for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen.